Who's wrong and who's wronger? In this corner, followed by millions, James the Exploding Unicorn Breakwell. And in that corner, ignored by millions, Steve Dash Rinko Levers.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to a rare but sober edition of Wrong and Wronger. I am the always affable and really swimming through the current of life, Olivas, and he is James, despite all of his good fortune, still a curmudgeon Breakwell. And James, man, I'm worried about you. How you doing this week?
You are worried about me. You're the one in the midst of chaos over there. You are in the thick of it. It is. I know you think you've made progress, but like you are just going further and further into this trap. Why don't you update everybody on what major milestone you have finally hit?
Well, toward the end of last week, our realtor sent a one-sentence text that was, the previous owner now, has the money, we are officially closed.
Wow.
And we thought, woo, it is all either uphill, it is clean sledding from here. What could possibly go wrong? So that was the major milestone, James, and offered us just a brief moment of happiness. It was nice.
So I will point out that is two sentences. So I don't know, did he just not use a period between those two completely separate thoughts or what?
Our realtor and syntax had a disagreement years ago, and I think the divorce was nasty.
So, actually, I do want to point out that I'm disappointed in you that BDSM Rattlesnake Ranch, on Twitter, I've noticed you were referring to it simply as Rattlesnake Ranch. I don't know where Rattlesnake Ranch is, but that is not your ranch. You can't just drop half the name.
You know, one of our alert listeners, JDB, and I don't know where he came from, unless the J stands for Judy P. This is like an alter ego of hers, but aptly pointed out you should call it Rattleloob Ranch. And I thought, ooh, that is a good name, but not one we can use in good conscience with our children.
Is Rattlesnake Ranch going to become like an official name for you? Is this going to be appearing on a sign at the end of your 9-mile long driveway?
You know what's funny? I stumbled upon, probably because Facebook eavesdrops on all of yours and my conversations.
Of course, obviously.
But there was an ad that popped up in my Facebook feed for a place that makes like metal signs. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, it'd be cool if I could find one that has like the stamp of a rattlesnake and get Rattlesnake Ranch on it. But they did not have any prefabbed ones with rattlesnakes, unfortunately.
And we all know you will not pay for custom artwork because despite the fact that you have spent as much as the GDP of a small country on Rattlesnake Ranch for reasons that make sense only to you, we all know you won't spring for the extra $50 for that rattlesnake decal. It's kind of like the people who, like on HGTV on House Hunters, they're going and they're looking at like a $2 million house. They're like, but it doesn't have a fridge in it. I'll have to buy a fridge. It's like, yes, that $1,500 fridge is the deal breaker on your $2 million house. Good way to have a line. Way to stick to it.
You know, the funny thing is the people that bought our old house, which was quite pricey, their stipulation was they wanted the washer and dryer. And what they didn't care about was that one of the HVAC units had blown out. And those are like $6,000. And I'm like, okay, you want the washer and dryer? Whatever. We'll buy another washing machine. I'm all right with that.
You know what the new luxury thing is? And I know there's a Instagram account called Zillow Gone Wild, and it's just fascinating. They just troll the internet for the wildest Zillow ratings. But like if you own a legit mansion these days, or even a wannabe mansion like Steve Olivas Manor, the mark of wealth now is that you don't just have one washer dryer pair, you have like 3 or 4. Like you have a wall of washers and dryers. Because who has time to push a button, wait for a load, and then push a second button? Like I thought that was pretty lazy. You know, we don't have to go in a river anymore and wash them on a washboard. You push a button, but that's too much work. You have to be able to put all your laundry in 3 or 4 separate washers at once, and then all in the dryers in a row. So you actually were not as rich as I thought you were, because you only had one washer and one dryer like a common pauper. So I guess.
Well, and now we have 0.
Yeah. Wow. You have no washer and dryer. Do tell.
Well, we I was just commenting a few weeks ago to my son as we were sitting at the laundromat. A rural Tennessee laundromat on a Saturday afternoon does not disappoint, James Breakwell.
Of course not.
But we were able to fit all of the laundry for 3 people into one machine and then put all of it into one dryer. It was fantastical.
Does Rattlesnake Ranch not have a hookup for a washer and dryer?
It does.
Okay, but
Rattlesnake Ranch currently has nothing anywhere. We're recording this on Wednesday morning, and for anyone who's following my Twitter or Facebook feed, you will see that Mrs. Steve has almost single-handedly. There were some things that I had to sort of push and lift out because she wasn't strong enough to do it on her own, but she has practically single-handedly completely gutted down to the floor and the 4 walls, both the big and the small cabin. So our intent, and this morning all of it got hauled off by a junk hauler that cost over $2,000. Thank you to the previous owner for leaving all of his crap in there and then refusing to pay to get rid of it.
He's in prison.
However,
What do you want? You want him to break out and clear it out for you?
Yes! I want him to pay for it at least. They got enough money for this damn place. They might as well drop a little money into being responsible human beings. But now we're back to he's in prison.
Does the money like go into his prison commissary, or is it waiting for him when he gets out? How does that work?
I don't have any idea. I really don't. I know that there's an attorney in New York that took care of the whole transaction. And that person, I don't even know if it's male or female, that person is the one that the money had to end up with before we were officially closed. That's also the person who snail mailed all the paperwork back.
Well, of course, because when you're an attorney, you have to be, confused by all modern technology, including fax machines, which is, have only been around for 30 or 40 years.
To answer your original question, there is nothing in Rattlesnake Ranch. It is completely devoid of anything. There's no counters, there's no cabinets. There's the kitchen is just 2 things sticking out of the floor for hot and cold water, and then a water return for the sink sticking out of the floor. The bathroom is completely empty. The toilet is gone. Like, it is empty.
I have so many questions, but am I correct in assuming that you do not have a contractor lined up to replace the many, 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 many things you just tore out?
Were you in on this conversation over the weekend? I can't remember if I texted you.
I was
this or
not.
Okay. One of my rock star buddies, we were talking on Saturday, and he's like, so what are you going to do with this place? And I said, well, Mrs. Steve just tore all the stuff out. And she's getting ankle replacement on September 30th. So we have to get this stuff rolling so that she can be in a wheelchair for 2 weeks and be able to not have to worry about hauling stuff. And he went, well, do you have workers? I said, no, nobody, A, wants to work, and B, we can't get anyone to come out there. And I don't even want to make a joke about this because it's a huge deal. But he said, I'm going to get a crew together and we're going to come out and do all the rebuilding for you. Because we got to rebuild the shower. We got to rebuild some walls. The floor was torn to crap. And I said, dude, I didn't call him dude. I called him by his name. I said, that is a huge ask, man. And he said, you didn't ask. I offered and we're going to make it happen. So on Saturday, he and a crew are going to come out, and Mrs. Steve is going to point where they need to be, and they're going to do all of the contract work.
So is that what I've been doing wrong all of this time? That like the contractors are just hanging out with rock stars? Is that did I need an extensive music career in the 70s and 80s in order to get workers to show up? Is that what you're telling me?
You know what's funny? I've known him for a couple years now, and there are so many people that just suck up and kiss his ass because he's him. And there's a lot of hangers-on that are freeloaders. Like, he's got an amazing property. He's the one that has all the 4th of July parties. Okay. And it's just funny how many friends and distant relatives he has that crawl out of the woodwork. So I don't disbelieve that a subset of those people are contractors or workers that know how to swing a hammer.
I have just set up my life in the complete wrong way. Here I was working so hard to make it as a family man and an author, and this whole time I should have been trying to be a rock star so that I can retire from being a rock star and just have an army of contractors and day laborers at my beck and call. Like, he is like the god of small-time jobs. Like, think about it. It's like if somebody needs something done, they could wait months or years for a regular contractor, or they could go to this guy. Like, this is how mafias start. He is outside of the normal pipeline. He has all this power just tied up, and he doesn't even deal in money. He just deals in favors. Like, you didn't ask, he offered. But what are you going to have to give him in return? Sometimes he's going to call you in the middle of the night, and you're going to have to throw a shovel in the trunk of your car and drive with the headlights off.
Yeah, and to make matters worse, we live way outside of town, and so does he. Like, he's got a big spread himself, but he's on the exact opposite side of the... If Nashville was a clock face, he would be on exactly the opposite side. So he GPS'd the travel time from his front door to our front door, and it was a little bit shocking for him. But despite that, he's going to show up anyway.
Wow. Man, and I guess this is the culmination of your plan too. You've been doing that podcast for zero money, the commute for all these years, all this time, and it culminated here with one day of free labor. And you know what? I have to say, it's worth it. Knowing how hard it is to get anybody to show up to do work, I commend you for your plan. You played the long game, and it paid off.
Yes, and I don't, despite... how arrogant James Breakwell is, I'm like the opposite of that. Like, I don't have the self-esteem to even feel good about this without paying these guys something. Like, I have a hard time asking for favors, and I have an even harder time, like, accepting that they're actually going to do this out of the goodness of their heart. So we'll toss a little cash their way, or to a charity, or whatever we need to do to make this right.
So I guess my question is, between now and Saturday, you said you don't have running water, you don't have a kitchen, you don't have toilets. Like, are you guys just pooping in a hole in the ground, or what's going on here?
Oh no, we still live in the garage, James.
Oh,
Make no
okay.
mistake, brother.
So you commute to Rattlesnake Ranch to tear out things and make your property worth less, and then return to your garage. Like,
yes. Although I'll tell you what, man. So our anniversary was last week, and Mrs. Steve and I got each other, i.e. she sort of made the transaction, but ATVs, like four-wheelers.
Whoa.
And dude, we were out zipping around the property on those suckers yesterday. That's a heck of a lot of fun. I still encourage you to come down and get on one of those things and just go nuts with me. It's great.
You know, it does sound fun. However, I have a strong preference for survival. And knowing what I know about Rattlesnake Ranch, I'm sure it doesn't take much to roll one of those things and go tumbling down a cliff and get eaten by 9 rattlesnakes. Like, that is how every trip there is going to end.
I don't know that rattlesnakes actually eat people, James.
I mean, they just kill you and then other things eat you. I mean,
Yeah.
The local Sasquatch or whatever else you got out there.
So yesterday we had to get the water turned on at the road so the plumber could come and make sure all the pipes were good. There were no leaks, by the way, which is nice. The leak in the shower that destroyed the walls, interior and exterior, that's taken care of. Now we just need to rebuild. But the water guy came up, and we were talking about all the flora and fauna that could kill you, because he was present when one of the first rattlesnakes was spotted going into our hot tub. But he said, yeah, not the DNR, but the wildlife, whatever the federal wildlife thing is, released like 1,200 cougars into the wild to populate. And he said, yeah, and every once in a while, there'll be something come through. People catch these things on their trail cams, and the DNR is like, yeah, they're just passing through. But there's cougars that get caught all the time in different parts of the county. So he said, there might be some that live here on your property. So that was good news. We could have to deal with big cats also.
Those things are pretty widespread. There was one, when I was very briefly a newspaper reporter, there was one in central Indiana. Somebody took a picture of it. It was kind of grainy, but I mean, you could tell it was... If it wasn't a puma, it was a very, very large cat with just a weird perspective. But what made me think it was really a puma is when I reached out to DNR for comment, and they're like, oh yeah, that's a coyote. And like, you look at this thing, there's no way you will ever ever confuse a cougar for a coyote. They just have a completely different body shape. And you could say, well, maybe that wasn't a puma. Maybe it was just a really large house cat and they caught it at a weird angle and made it look gigantic.
Right.
But you're never going to make it look like a coyote. And it's such a blatant lie. I was like, okay, it's kind of like when they say that, like, sharks don't eat people. They're more afraid of us than we are of them. But like the last time there were a lot of people in the water, World War II, ships getting sank left and right. All kinds of people were eaten by sharks. There are so many horror stories of sharks just tearing people apart. It's like, but I'm sure they wouldn't do that again. That was a one-time thing. And they're sharks. It's what they do. Sharks eat people. There are pumas everywhere. And those conservation people, they'll lie to you because they don't want you to freak out and buy a gun and shoot their precious pumas. So, watch out, because those pumas are more important than you. They probably cost a lot more money to put down there than you do. And if it comes down to you or them, DNR is definitely going to pick them. And I can't blame them, especially in your case in particular.
I am a shrink, so we could send me out to have a little sit down with the puma to explain that this is not a good way to live your life. But I will say, on the topic of shooting things, I was taking out the baseboards yesterday because Mrs. Steve is going to bleach the floors to bleach all of the rattle lube residue out of that place. So I was out front pulling nails out of baseboards, and Mrs. Steve walked out and said, "We need a gun." I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because a giant spider just jumped out of where one of the baseboards was." And I thought, how big could the spider be? So I went in, and I thought, holy Christ, we need a gun. The spider, it was hairy, James.
Wow.
It was hairy and black as the devil. And it was probably it wasn't as big as my hand if it would have spread out, but it was a good size. And it was in a dark corner, so we couldn't get a good picture of it. But then came the debate of how do we kill this thing? Because it was not going to get ushered out the door without serious resistance. And what she ended up doing, I say she, not that I wasn't involved, just that I had other things I needed to get done at the time that were a little more important. But she took one of the sticky mouse traps and sort of threw it onto the spider. And my feedback was, a spider walks on a sticky web all day, can probably get off. And she said, not this thing. And the spider was stuck on that sticky mouse trap on its back, and it was punching in 8 directions at once.
Wow.
And its fangs were going. And I thought, okay, so this is how I shall die. But the spider never got off of that thing. And I threw it in the garbage can, and I noticed like a shadow when I did, and I thought, could the spider get off this thing? And I didn't want to have nightmares for the rest of my life, James. So I did the unthinkable. I brought it outside, turned it upside down, and stomped it with my boot, so that spider got squished. And I don't know if I could hear an audible scream when the pop followed my boot's descent, but fortunately, it was dead, and it took quite a bit to kill. I don't disagree that next time we may need a gun.
So 2 thoughts. One, it was probably a wolf spider, if I had to guess. We have those up here in Illinois and Indiana, and they get pretty big and they're hairy, and you'll find them we used to run into them in Boy Scout camp. They hide in piles of wood, places, firewoods, places that are dark, and they can bite, and it's not kill you like a rattlesnake, but I think it'll hurt quite a bit. And second thought, you got to be careful with your stories about killing spiders, even though, I just advocated the killing of sharks and pumas and all that. I had a tweet the other day. My wife was messaging me while I was at the store. My kids found a spider, and they are terrified of spiders. If there's a spider in one of the bathrooms, they will not use that bathroom for weeks. And so they encountered this spider while I was out of the house, and they had elaborate conversations about how they were going to deal with this spider, and finally they had to take a vote, and one of them was going to throw a shoe, and there was much screaming and all of this. And on Facebook lately, I've broken my own rule. I've been commenting on my tweets and responding to people, and I read the comments, and it was just everybody was so sad that they killed this spider. It's like, you've got to be kidding
screw
me.
Those people.
So many things die just to keep us alive on a daily basis. I only eat meat. Every day I'm on this earth, something died. Even if you're a vegan, every day you're on this earth, something died. When that combine runs through the field, it doesn't go out and clear the field of grasshoppers first and honk the horn to make sure all the mice get out of the way. Like, stuff dies so we can be alive. And the fact that my kids killed this spider, you know what? We didn't need the spider in the house. Yes, it eats bugs, but you know what? If we see those bugs, we kill those bugs too. We have a kill everything policy. Unless you have you've been particularly invited into this house or given birth to live in this house, you do not belong here. So anyway, enjoy being canceled off the internet. I will direct all hate mail to Rattaloo Branch.
I care not if I offend dumb people, James. And furthermore, it's real easy to be brave when it's not you face to 8 eyes with a spider looking back at you. Like, you start to become well aware of your own mortality when you are vulnerable like that. If it's in a glass tank, yeah, you talk a little smack on the internet. But you get this thing to where it can jump and grab you by the face, you start thinking a little differently.
So what day are you actually going to start sleeping at Rattaloo Branch?
No clue.
No clue. So you have the house.
No clue.
But you don't really have the house because you're not in the house. You're just commuting to the house to be miserable.
So the kitchen cabinets, and I'd like to thank everyone who's decided that not working is better than working. I don't know what you do without purpose every day, but I guess that's between you and your God. But it is 24 weeks to get cabinets. You know, you were already my least favorite person on earth, James. You just dropped 2 notches with that hysterical laughter.
24 weeks. It's half a year.
And this is by one of the major retailers in the United States. Like, this is not Fred's Cabinet Company and he can't get plywood. This is by a major distributor. They can't get their hands on wood.
Did you know this before you tore out all of your cabinets?
James, the cabinets were soaked in mouse urine, so they were going one way or the other.
Man, and what about this property appealed to you again between the rattlesnakes and the mouse urine? Oh, by the way, when you're there, like on those floors, are they still slick with lube? Like, I've got to imagine the bleach can only do so much.
The floors are not necessarily slick, although they are tile. But they are covered in little mouse droppings that, from what I understand, give off like a toxic dust. So Mrs. Steve was in full hazmat, like ventilator, while she was vacuuming up mouse poop for the last couple days with a HEPA vac. And she's going to now go through and bleach all the floors and where the baseboards used to be, just to get rid of that stuff. So it's ugly.
Did you kill the mice first? I don't recall hearing about that step.
Oh, Mrs. Steve went on an almost unprecedented killing spree to get rid of those mice. Yeah, no, we had dead mice everywhere. I mean, it looked like the killing fields. This was like, I don't know, Shiloh back in the early days. And
good reference. Very specific. When people go for Civil War battles, Shiloh is not where most of them would have popped up. So props to being very specific.
I think Shiloh was the bloodiest battle of the Civil War, wasn't it?
It was up there. It was, I get them confused. I usually stick to World War II, but I've listened to a few Civil War books in a row. That was one of Grant's earliest battles, wasn't it? Wasn't that the one where he got surprised and both sides? I mean, half the battles they fought to a stalemate. Anyway, what did she use? Is she out there with a baseball bat, or did she have the chemical traps, or what was she doing?
No, but it's funny. One of the plumbers that came out yesterday was walking around the house with me, and he said, I like this siding. I said, yeah, we're going to replace it with metal siding at some point to keep the carpenter bees out. He said, you know, with carpenter bees, what I find, if you hit them hard enough, they don't come back. I thought, well, slow down, man. Let me write this out on my steno pad. Okay. Anyway, no, she used a lot of those glue traps, like what we trapped the spider with. Mm-hmm. And that's probably going to get a bunch of hate mail. And again, kiss my ass. These are not your mice, and this is not your house. So the glue traps were everywhere, and she also put a lot of poison around. So the funny thing is, you think of mice as being kind of big because of, I don't know, cartoons and stuff. They're actually pretty little, those little field mice. And God rest their soul, they will be missed, James.
So we had a mouse issue. We've been in the house like 8 or 10 years at that point, and just one year randomly, I guess the mice all got chased out of the surrounding fields for whatever reason, and we got them in the walls. And when it happens, it sounds like you're in a horror movie. You hear things scampering around, you hear random, scratching. You don't know if a demon's gonna pop out or what. And we got those things. They're like these little black plastic caverns, and you put them in, they crawl in there, and the idea is they nibble on them, and it's got like cyanide, but it's only activated, it makes them thirsty, and it's only supposed to be activated when they get water. And the idea is they go outside to get a drink, and then the dead mice are outside your house. Now, in practice, there's water inside your house too, and mice aren't that smart. They're not always polite enough to die in the right place. The most traumatic moment of this, and I know we're going to run out of time here, but I'll go ahead, just so you can't get all the hate for killing your spider and mice. I'll take my fair share of hate too. So one of these mice had ingested poison and decided to die in the middle of our kitchen. So I, at the time, had picked up the kids from daycare. This was several years ago. And I walk in there, and I see this dead mouse sitting in the middle of the kitchen. Like, oh no. So I said, kids, stay back, which of course makes them want to go and look more. And I grab, and there's no lock on the kitchen door, because who would put a lock on their kitchen door? So I'm trying to push the kids back. And I run over, and I grab the pooper scooper, and I go to scoop this mouse up. And it's not all the way dead. It starts flopping around and twitching, and I have to go, and it's like our pooper scooper's like a dustbin and a metal rake, and I have to like pin it down, and I run it across the street and throw it in somebody else's dumpster. It's like, oh man, I do not miss mice at all. So Godspeed to you. But I gotta say, if you just I gotta think you didn't kill them all in a day or two. You're gonna have to leave those traps out for a while, because I guarantee you, when you've got 50 or 60 mice, you've got 600 or 700 mice. They will come back.
Well, with people there a lot, I'm hoping that keeps them back a little. And with fewer mice, that will mean fewer rattlesnakes, which is nice. And I'm hoping it all kind of moves in a positive direction.
So you have destroyed an entire ecosystem. From mice to rattlesnakes to spiders to possibly pumas. You moved in, nature moved out, the lube moved out, the cabinets moved out, everything. You were just flattening the earth and salting a path behind you. So kudos to you. Nothing will live and nothing will move at Rattle Lube Ranch.
I will say in closing, as I was standing in the middle of our yard peeing yesterday, I was watching a hawk come down, and it got something.
Oh.
And it carried it away, and it was a good distance off, but it was on our property, and it plucked something out of the tall grass, and I think life will still go on regardless of what we do.
Now that hawk is going to get canceled as well for whatever it killed.
Well, if you would like to continue listening both forward and backward, we had somebody who was nice enough to write that she's working her way through all 250 some episodes that we've put up over the years. And you can do that right here at Wrong and Wronger, and listen to how compare your life to ours and feel damn good about yourself going to sleep tonight. But until we meet again, this is Steve, still homeless, living in a garage, Dr. Steve. And despite the fact that I'm a doctor, for God's sake, for James, the exploding, not doctored, Breakwell, saying exploding unicorn, saying thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and remember, as always, two wrongs can